This is TWiT.
Tech Break is brought to you by ACI Learning. Globally respected companies and agencies turn to ACI Learning year after year to help them maintain their competitive edge. Supporting organizations across audit, IT, and cybersecurity readiness, ACI Learning keeps organizations at the top of their game. Visit acilearning.com and let ACI level up your IT team.
The one thing that happened while we were gone, and I saw a lot of mourning about it, the dark sky went dark. Apple, as you know, bought Dark Sky, and I guess January 1st was the last day for the app, yeah?
Yeah, it joins Peanuts, the Peanuts gang in the Apple jail, saying, sorry, we have acquired you. You must not go out and entertain and amuse other people. Right
the API continues, they say, through March 31st. But I saw a lot of people saying, there's nothing, as even Apple Weather with the new hyper-local features and so forth is not as good as Dark Sky. Do you feel that way too?
I would say, yeah. They did not. They Appleized it. It feels a little bit more, I don't know, but it just isn't. It doesn't have the same. I mean, I use Dark Sky since it was released, and I just feel like the ease of just even adding a city is much harder in Weather than it is than it was in Dark Sky. Like it's just like all the little things that make Dark Sky great. Apple has not. I don't feel like Apple added that back in. Weather is serviceable, but it's not great the way Dark Sky was.
Yeah, we should say that the Dark Sky API became WeatherKit, and it has a REST API, so it can be used by websites or by Android apps or by anybody else. It's not just on iOS. I wrote a Python script and I use it for like my weather station. So people can still write apps that use it. It's just now it's the WeatherKit API instead of the Dark Sky API. I know like Carrot Weather, there are a bunch of other apps that give you at least the option to use that API. I think Carrot Weather also now has a new, because that app, it's a subscription app. It's a little pricey, but it's so good. And it actually has, among its many different layouts that you can choose and build yourself, one that it pretty much apes the look and feel of Dark Sky. So if you're desperate to get something that looks a lot like Dark Sky, Carrot Weather is worth exploring. The Apple Weather app, it's like all the other Apple apps, right? It's the data is the same, basically, but it's a stock app, so its features are all sanded off. And, Alex strikes me as somebody who doesn't want the 4 buttons sanded off version of any app, and quite rightly so. Quite rightly so.
It's the little things, like just adding. I still haven't quite figured out how to smoothly. There's just usually a lot of swearing that goes on when I try to add a new city.
Oh yeah, me too.
It's like what I don't understand. I don't like I used to be able to just tap this and add a city, and it's like so it's not even like shaving off the edges. It's like taking away a really useful thing and making it complicated, which is very un-Apple. I don't quite understand how that happened.
Especially when it takes you a little while to realize that, like, you just went on vacation or you went on a business trip, and the app has not yet figured out that you're no longer in New York City or you're no longer in San Francisco. You're now in New England, and so if you're thinking, "Wow, 58 degrees, wow, wonderful!" Like, no.
I kept getting rain starting warnings while I was in LA for the rain in Northern California.
I got rain warnings all week, and I was in Mexico.
Yeah.
Lisa said, Lisa's looking at her watch. She said, the rain's going to come. And I said, no, that's not here. It's in Petaluma. The sun is still going to shine here.
At that, yeah. I also wanted to point out there was a funny Slate story last week about how apparently meteorologists hated Dark Sky.
Because it took their job away.
Yeah, well, so this is the thing, is like, it's not, meteorologists are all about the weather models. And if you read anything about this, Michael Lewis wrote about this in a couple of his books. The accuracy of the National Weather Service in the last 20 years, even since 2000, has improved dramatically. Like, we are so much better at forecasting weather. The computer models for weather forecasts are so good. But there is this moment where there's this sort of chauvinism, which is anything that isn't spat out of the computer model is considered lesser. And what they say about Dark Sky is, you guys don't understand. It's not a computer model. It's analyzing the precipitation radar and the direction it's moving and just extrapolating from that, which is like, that is absolutely true. It's not running a big computer model of the entire atmosphere. It's looking at where the rain is headed and saying it's headed toward you. But that's valuable in lots of cases, and that's why people like Dark Sky. And it can't be both. No, it's not going to be able to tell you based on that a sudden thunderstorm is going to appear or something like that in Oklahoma or something like that. But like the reason people like dark sky is that you could look at where you were on the map, and it's what we all do with radar images anyway, right? Which is, oh, it's coming my way, and it just put that into practice, and that's why people loved it.
I felt very like James Bond. There was one point where I had dark sky and I could just see a cliff of water coming, and my wife was in Washington D.C. and she was with the kids, and they're walking around some of the things to see there, and I'm working at the office. And I literally said, I need you to get into, there's an Uber coming for you. I need you to get into that Uber right now. Right now. And she literally said, she closed the door, and suddenly the rain was like, like it just.
Get in the car right now.
The car, I looked at it and I was just like, there's a wall headed towards my family.
I will never understand why people are so, and I include myself in this, why we are so fascinated with weather. Especially here in Northern California, where the weather isn't, I could see maybe if you were worried about tornadoes or hurricanes.
I don't think about it much except for the winter. I mean, during the summer, it's like it's not going to be
always
anything.
the same.
It's going to be clear, and but during the winter, we'll pay attention.
Yeah, I mean, go visit someplace that actually has weather, and where the weather can actually cause disasters. Like the difference between, like, last weekend when it was like low teens for the weekend in Boston, New England, that was a big deal because, again, my place is kind of old. And you have to make the choice of, do we really want to heat the whole house, or do we want to make sure the pipes don't freeze in half the house and just sort of bunker in the one half of the house you're going to keep super, super warm? And like I said, I lost my December 23rd plans were totally skeezicks because, again, high tides plus the rain meant that there was no way to get in or out of my neighborhood for a good 3 or 4 hours. And so you really have to know 24 hours in advance, is there anything I need to dread? Sometimes it's more than just, do I take a hat? It really is, okay, do I double check to make sure the sump pump is working? Do I make sure that the heater, that's the heater strip that's on the pipes that's sort of near the entranceway, do I want to make sure that those things are absolutely working perfectly? Because otherwise it's dramatic, man. It is dramatic.
The world's best terrible weather app, writes Russell Jacobs in Slate. He tells the story of dark sky, which I'd forgotten. I remember it was created in 2011 by Jack Turner and Adam Grossman, who did a Kickstarter, raised $40,000. It is, of course, we're talking about it because it's gone now. Apple bought it, and I'm sure they made more than $40,000 when Apple bought it. He writes, suddenly everyone I knew was a meteorologist, pulling out their pocket-sized radar display to chime in about whether a baseball game would be postponed or a wedding ceremony moved inside. Was it perfect? God, no. The other thing that stood out about dark sky, it wasn't very good. Dark skies forecasts failed me on hikes, bike trips, park days, beach days, birthdays, and more. He says meteorologists hated dark sky. Yeah. As you said, Jason, it was processing the images, said Andrew Blum, author of The Weather Machine. But there's more to forecasting than looking at images. It wasn't using the physics models you were talking about. Any weather forecast beyond a couple of hours, he's quoting Andrew Blum here, any computer forecast beyond a couple of hours is going to depend on the weather models, supercomputer models that work according to the laws of physics. We're getting, right now, we're getting weather models about what's going to happen because we're expecting a lot of rain towards the end of the week. And I'm amazed that they said, well, Saturday it's going to be, I mean, it's amazing. That's, the 5-day forecast, the 10-day forecast. Dark sky, I guess, I didn't really use dark sky, so I'm kind of recusing myself. But he says, when we talk about anything past a few hours, we're talking about physics. When we talk about dark sky, all it was doing was taking the visual input of the radar and telling us what was going to happen over the next couple of hours. But people did love that warning. Rain is 27 minutes away. Rain isn't, right? People loved that.
See, this is, they love the CSI effect. They expect computers to be able to tell them things as precisely as that, when really there's the kind of weather where you're just curious, do I need a coat? Do I not need a coat? When you realize, though, that yes, there is like a big winter storm coming, or there really is like a flood watch in effect, or there's a hurricane that's coming in, that's when I stop using apps, and that's when I start going to the Twitter feeds of like my local meteorologist, because like you said, it really is all about these models. There are multiple different weather models out there, and the meteorologist who's been working like in your part of the state for the past 10 years knows that ordinarily I would use this model, but it's really no good when you've got when you've got this situation that we're looking at. In this situation, this other model tends to be more accurate in my opinion. So I'm going to make my guesses based on this model, not and informed by others. So yeah, I mean, there's the off the shelf stuff that kind of fits, but then you really want the really tailor made stuff of people who know what they're doing when you want to avoid burst pipes and you want to avoid floods.
Why a meteorologist who went to school, who studied it, who has his own makeup artist and hairstylist might be a little jealous. For instance,
so suffice to say, there's a library of skills that you need to present to be a successful meteorologist.
Jack,
but it really is not just knowing what the models are saying, but knowing exactly how these models were put together, and so where are their blind spots, and being able to navigate all this data and assimilate it for this specific situation.
And I have to say, though, I will say that one of the reasons that I stopped even thinking about looking at the weather forecast was because I had an app on my phone that tells me mostly what I need to know.
So it did take money out of your meteorologist's mouth.
Definitely took my interest out of it. I mean, it was the last vestige of the news that was actually something that was local. And then I had something on my phone and I was kind of like, okay, well, I'm done.
But people always said, and I don't know if it's true, that they always hated meteorologists because they were always wrong, right? What was the movie where he's playing
Steve Martin? He's playing
a meteorologist, and somebody dumps a Slurpee on him because he said it was going to rain and it didn't, or vice versa. And you see that all the time, and that's maybe a trope that's not so much a truism. Was dark sky more accurate? No, it was less accurate, right? For the long term forecast,
it was just more current. Like, so you would go, what is it like?
For instant,
what's going out? What's going on this afternoon? I didn't have to look at something the evening before to see what I'm going to do tomorrow. I just looked up at, like, what is it going to, and while it wasn't as accurate, it was it would respond very quickly. So it might be wrong for tomorrow, but it's usually right for the next couple hours, and so you'd see something because it's looking at that process.
What? So, and the big, like weather.com and AccuWeather and these, they use NOAA's predictions, right? They use these big models.
Right.
So shouldn't we just, what is Apple doing? Is Apple just doing the dark sky thing, or is it rolling in some stuff from the weather service?
Like dark sky, it's aggregating information from the National Weather Service and other weather providers. There are other models and other providers. It's not all coming from NOAA, or it's not all based on the same NOAA projection. And then, of course, Apple has to cover the rest of the world, right? They have to cover everywhere. And so there are different weather sources in different countries of varying degrees of quality. Carrot Weather will let you pick
Norwegian,
from like 4 different models.
The Norwegian forecasts. I like the Norwegian. But so those big forecasts, those are all super physics models, right? Those are supercomputer models. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
So that was the unique thing about dark sky was it wasn't.
Yeah, that's why I don't get that the meteorologists are so mad at dark sky, which is like, it's like finding out that a friend of yours just absolutely hates a perfectly innocuous thing. And you're like, why do you hate that so much? But I think this is because people were giving all this credit to dark sky for being brilliant. And they're like, it's not brilliant. It's just looking at the radar. But like,
it's often wrong. It's often wrong.
But it's hyper local and super specific to things that the computer model can't do, which is it going to rain outside my door in 10 minutes? And the computer models aren't built to do stuff like that. They'll have probabilities over the course of many hours that were made, several hours ago. Whereas if you look at the radar and there's a blob and it's like going like a video game monster, it's like dit, and it's coming right at you. And the app can say, yeah, that blob is going to be here in 15 minutes. You know that if you need to walk the dog, do it now, or you're going to get rained on. And like, I don't know why that makes the meteorologists angry. It's a different thing, and it's very clever. And we were all using your radar images that way anyway, people. Do you not understand that?
This is the movie, The Weatherman, Nicolas Cage getting hit by a Slurpee or a milkshake, and because his forecast is so bad. And there's Michael Caine about to berate him for his terrible forecasts.
Well, judging by Nicolas Cage's hair, that was a long time ago. Like I said, it really is. The stats are amazing at how much better we've gotten at weather forecasting in the last 20 years.
People hate weathermen.
Yeah, but they don't hate them like they used to because
better.
In the The Fifth Risk by Michael Lewis, and also The Signal and the Noise by Nate Silver goes into great detail. Nate Silver's book is really good at talking about just how much forecasting has changed in the last 20 years for the better. But the conundrum of it is that people don't understand probability, which is sort of Nate Silver's whole point in that book. And the example is, look, if I tell you that there's a 30% chance of rain and so you don't bring an umbrella and you get rained on, you're mad at me. But I told you there was a 30% chance and this was in the 30%, right? And like, people don't want to know odds.
30%? Right? Don't never, is it going to rain
quote
or
me
not?
The odds, right?
I don't need odds. So
never quote me the odds, as Han Solo tells us.
Yes, never quote
the
me.
Book of Solo.
Yes.
So yeah, again, we just want to know what's going to happen. And the fact is the computer models can't tell you exactly what's going to happen, although they are way more accurate, way further out too. They say it's going to rain really hard on Wednesday night. You know what? Guess it's gonna. I mean, they're not wrong. They're not going to be wrong.
But it's also though a chaotic environment, and no matter how good your supercomputer.
The models got more complexity than the Earth is not possible, right?
Exactly. Apparently, I didn't know this. The developers of Dark Sky more or less boasted when they first launched the app they weren't weather scientists. They had been working on a project called Tiny Face, which was an app designed to scientifically measure how small someone could make their face. Gee, I kind of wish that they were using highfalutin computer vision algorithms.
I mean, they got there eventually, right?
Yeah. How tiny can you make your face? Okay, so I'm sure they made a lot of money. Apple is charging, but not a lot if you want to use the Apple weather kit. If you're a $99 a year developer, as I am, and obviously you are, Jason, you can do half a million.
You get like a million API.
Yeah, half a million calls a month for your $99. But if you want to do an app, it's going to cost you as much as $1,000.
Brian Muller, the guy who does Carrot Weather, says that the prices are actually reasonable. He was holding his breath, right, about how expensive was that API going to be for app developers, and the answer is not. Apple's not trying to rip people off with it. It's a reasonably priced API, and I mean they have competition, right? Like that's the beauty of it is. If you don't want to use Apple's API, there are other options, which is not the case with so much of what Apple charges for these days.
It's very unclear on this site if it's $1,000 a month or $1,000 a year. I'm going to guess it's a year since it's $99 a year for half a million. So it must be $999.99.
Above a certain level, it's like call me, like ask for a quote.
Yeah. I might. That's kind of fun. Is it? It's a JSON interface.
Yeah. It's a perfectly normal REST API, and you can use it like I've been doing with Python, and you get back a little JSON blob, and it's pretty cool, right? Because I am one of those people who is obsessed with the weather, even though I live in California and I have a home weather station and all of that. And I got so used to all of my data being retrospective, which is like what was the high yesterday, what was the low yesterday, and then I look at the JSON blob from WeatherKit. And it's the future. It's weird. It's like what will be the temperature later today?
Nice.
What about tomorrow?
Yeah.
And it's all just in there out 10 days, I think. Super easy to use. And if you're a registered Apple developer and you're using it for your own personal projects, you've got more API calls. You could query it every minute and you would never use the API calls.
Alex, aside from the UI, which obviously you like the Dark Sky UI better, are there features missing in Apple Weather?
I don't think that there's anything missing. In fact, there's probably more there that's there. It's just the interface isn't as smooth. And literally the one that frustrates me the most every single time, I just don't do it often enough. Maybe if I do it, is just adding a city. Like it just seems like I used to be able to just tap on it and just go, okay, I want a new city. And it's like you're scrolling through it. And I always figure it out, but I don't figure it out in a way that I remember. I just figure it like I just bang on it and swear at it until I get a new city. And then I'm like, okay, then I go back to whatever I was doing.
Well, I guess we should do what all the magazines are doing. What are your top 5 replacements for Dark Sky? Besides Apple Weather, which everybody's got. Is there something better than Apple Weather?
The worst part is that I'm probably just going to use Apple Weather. Like I'm frustrated with it. I'll eventually figure out how to get the city working.
It's got a widget. And Carrot's number 2.
That's fun.
Carrot, I'm all in on. I mean, Carrot. Again, if you care enough to pay for a weather app, Carrot's the one. You can set up the layout to be whatever you want it to be. You can choose. There's various levels of premium membership that lets you tie it into like local weather stations for actual accurate temperatures, which is always a problem here in the Bay Area because of all the microclimates. And it's snarky by default. It does like wacky. Makes wacky statements, like it's a very HAL 9000 kind of character, but you can also turn that off. I actually have it turned off. I have it be. It's just a sedate weather robot for me, but it's state of the art. I think it's the best weather app for sure on Apple platforms.
And you said it's a little expensive.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, they have various in-app purchase subscription levels. So I mean, some people are not going to blink at paying whatever $20 a year for a weather app, and other people are going to say that's outrageous.
There's a free version. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it starts free and then you add features with like I have my home weather station feeding into it for the current temperature, and that I have to pay at a premium level for that. But I love it because it means that like the temperature on my Apple Watch is my actual temperature and not, a weather station that's 8 miles away and 15 degrees different, which Leo, in the Bay Area,
we
it's
have
all about where you are.
Yeah. So the chat room had some recommendations, but I'm going to ask you again because I figure if you're in an IRC chat while watching a technology podcast stream live, you're probably also into the weather. So you kind of got some expertise in all this. So I'm just curious if there's one that you guys really like.
I will say I just downloaded the weather. I already had Carrot. I realized when I went to download it, I was
paid for Carrot.
This is really fun. It's really fun.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But my understanding too, you mentioned the Norwegian weather, but like my understanding is that a lot of people there's like an authority in your region for weather. And I believe in Scandinavia and especially like in Norway, I think they there's a Norwegian weather app that's like, if you're in Norway, that's the app to get. So it depends. Whereas like if you're in Australia, I saw a thing today about how Apple weather is apparently incredibly bad in Australia for some reason. I don't know if that's true or not, but like it may vary based on where you are in the world, what your best app choice is.
So with Carrot, you can choose a personality ranging from professional. Carrot will behave like a normal weather app to overkill. Carrot will go way over the effing line. Okay. Definitely want to do that. I agree. Whatever. I don't know. Yes. Yes. I have to restore settings apparently. So I have used this before. Here's my current location. So it does. Okay. I can't show this on the screen because there's so much profanity. So there you go.
You turn it all the way up.
That's why I turned that off really quick. It's fun for the first couple of days, but then you have no idea like how much it sort of starts to weigh on you when you're having a bad day anyway, and you're just okay. I'm just going to get through the day, and your app is just saying, "Hey, idiot! Why you weren't going to go outside anyway? Were you? You big idiot!" Like, you know what? Yeah. I don't think I want to pay $10 a year for it to be insulted.
It says right now, clouds form when cat pee evaporates and condenses high up in the cooler air. So it's not factual, but I guess you don't need that. And I presume it's highly customizable with all of the features and so forth.
So basically, it's ChatGPT as a weather service, as a weather forecaster.
Yeah. A lot of people like Weather Underground. I remember in the early days of smartphones, there was quite a brisk competition for weather apps. Dark Sky kind of eliminated a lot of, I think, third-party apps. Snowflake Weather, so you could select your provider. All right, so there's a few others. I guess it's really it's a personal kind of thing. I have Snowflake. I think I did Snowflake because of knowing Dark Sky was going away. But it all seems like kind of the same. Maybe because of where we live. There's not that.
And there's different flavors of apps, but there's not that many flavors of weather sources, right? In the end, there are only a handful of weather forecast backends that exist.
Yeah.
And so, it's and I mean, on one level, that's the beauty of these weather apps is it's more like the interface playground. Like pick your poison. The weather is not going to change, right? It's just what app brings it to you in a way that you find enjoyable.